Hi everyone, Rob from Docs Toc, joined by my co-host Abbas. Today we have David Amerland. David is a chemical engineer turned business and science writer. He focuses on neuroscience, specifically what motivates us to exercise and make decisions regarding our health. I was so fascinated by his discussion, I ordered his book during the conversation. The book's called Built to Last. Highly encourage you to check it out. I think you're really going to enjoy this interview. I very much enjoyed speaking with David and hope we can invite him back again soon. Hit the like and subscribe button. We'd love to hear your feedback. Without further ado, here's our interview with David Amerland. David, welcome to the show. We're so glad to have you. I was really fascinated by your background. Tell us a little bit about yourself and how you became your training and how you got interested in health.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks. First of all, I'm excited to be here and thank you very much for giving me the opportunity. And my background, where to start? I'm a chemical engineer by training. I did my master's in quantum dynamics in laminar flow processes. Then I sort of got into, from there, I was recruited to do science articles for a major newspaper in Britain. So I never got to practice as a chemical engineer. And I put all that knowledge and all those years into effect into writing articles that popularized science for a lay audience. And from there, I sort of went into business journalism for a while. And then I started writing books. And the books were technical in nature. And while I'm doing all that, even before that, around the age of 13, I started training in martial arts, which is my introduction into fitness. I've been training in martial arts and fitness pretty much every day since then. I'm 60 now. And there was only 1 year's break. So we're looking at 46 years where I've been training in some form every single day. And I know it sounds like a lot of dedication and discipline. It sounds amazing on the outside. On the inside is a different picture. Because when we engage in that kind of focus on something which is essentially a stressor, it's essentially a coping mechanism for other things which we feel. So, I mean, for me, I was in Australia. My parents were moving state fairly frequently. I was changing schools. I had no connection to the school, the kids, or the culture. So I was always the outsider. So if you're 13, you're experiencing that. There's a lot of things going on in your head. It's a bit like a pressure cooker. And you look for ways to sort of channel that. And there are various ways available. You can harm yourself. You can harm others. You can engage in coping behaviors which involve substances of some sort. I just happened to find martial arts by accident. I got into it and I liked it. And that became for me the coping mechanism, made me feel good. And that's how I applied it. So although it sounds amazing that I did that for so long, and from those 46 years, 10 of those years were at high level competition, national competitions in Britain and on the international stage. I've got black belt in karate. I've got a black belt in WTF Taekwondo, which is one style. I've got a second degree black belt in ITF, which is a different style. And in each one of these, I started from scratch and worked my way up. And I'm a certified Taekwondo instructor. So all these amazing things are essentially the side effect of that application, which allowed me essentially to balance the storm inside me and achieve homeostasis of some kind.
Very beautiful. My boys will love that because both of my boys, I have two boys, 22 and 26, and they're all to martial art, and from the time of them being young, and that they think that really helps sort of control their energy, and it's very healthy for them to do whatever they do. So that's fantastic. And you wrote about 19 books, is that correct?
That's right. Yeah, I've written books on search and social media marketing and branding and decision making and intentionality in our lives, and the latest one, which is fitness. On the surface they are, but really they aren't, because all those things are aspects of us. The connective thread in all those books, which fascinates me and which is what I explore every time, is human behavior. Why do we do something in a particular context? Why do we choose not to do something else? What is it that actually drives us? And for a long, long time, we only had experiential things to go by, just the observable phenomena of human behavior, because it's very difficult to sort of take a person apart, never mind it's unethical, and analyze them. But since the last 20, 25 years, we've actually managed through fMRI technology, which is portable, non-invasive, very detailed, to capture the aspects of the human brain thinking while it does things, and also our instruments which basically analyze neurochemistry in our bloodstream and neurobiological differences at cellular level as we undergo stresses. They become a lot better, and they give us a more granular picture of what's happening to us in our mind and our body as we experience something, as we make a critical decision, as we face a personal crisis, as we undergo physical training, which actually puts us in a difficult spot, which we need to adjust. And all these things essentially are like a puzzle. They're pieces of human behavior. And my fascination with this is that if we manage to piece them together, even imperfect as they are right now, they give us a better understanding of our own operating system. They make us better human beings. They make us more capable of behaving better in difficult situations, making better life decisions, becoming better in ourselves and how we operate in relation to other people.
So the book, Built to Last, that's the latest one. Tell us a little bit about that. I have not read it yet, but I read the sample on Amazon. And why now? You've been working on this your whole life. What prompted you to write it?
Well, that's a great question. Well, I wasn't intending to do anything that had to do with fitness, even though when I started writing about neuroscience back in 2016, when I brought out the Sniper Mind, which is a book essentially on critical decision making under pressure. I interviewed lots of snipers. I looked at neurobiological research on them. I looked at neuroscience, which was groundbreaking at the time. The physical component came through, and it sort of registered at the back of my mind, but not actively at the forefront. And when I did the follow-up, which was intentional, how we live as people in a way that allows us to control our life and control the outcomes and the direction and the trajectory it actually achieves. Again, there was a small physical element to that. It's inescapable. The mind is in the body and the body is in the mind. But what actually brought Built to Last around, this is quite fascinating, is I have a friend who's a policeman, and I have a home gym, and we train together once a week. And he has a home gym, and he trains on his own. And we just sort of train together. It ups the level a little bit. It's a social component, which is very healthy for us. And we talk as we train. And in those discussions, sometimes he would bring an article which had some kind of myth, which we needed to debunk. I discuss some kind of study with him. He's a little bit younger than me, he's 50. So we discussed, the possibilities of age and how we need to train differently our body and our mind for this. And out of those discussions over a period of about 3 years came the spark of the book. So that's how it was born. And then I sort of sent the idea to my agent, and she said, there might be something in this. So that's how it went.
How long took you to research and write the book?
I had a lot of research from previous books, so it wasn't as difficult, but it took roughly 2 years from beginning to end. I had to sort of get up to speed with the latest research. I had to look at new studies on how the brain interacts with the body when the two are under pressure, when one is under pressure and the other one is not, and how it is impacted. And then I had to sort of draw the conclusions out of that, because the book Built to Last is not prescriptive. It's not the kind of fitness book that you're going to read and it'll tell you, listen, you got to do this, and you got to do this, and you got to do this. Instead, it's more like a key to the code of us. It allows us to understand better, because each one is an individual. Our needs are different. Our backgrounds are different. The way we relate and respond to exercise is going to be completely different. So the book helps us analyze, first of all, our who are you really in yourself? How do you visualize yourself now? How are you going to see yourself 10 years from now, 20 years from now? And then your why. If you're going to say to yourself, I want to be healthy and I want to be strong. These are logical things to desire. And there's no contention about them. If we get anybody off the street and tell them, 10 years from now, 20 years from now, would you like to be strong? Yes. Would you like to be healthy? Yes. Would you like to enjoy life and feel happy living? Absolutely. Okay. So why don't we do it? So understanding our why allows us to essentially mine our emotions. And emotions drive our decisions. So everything we do is driven by emotional states, which are essentially at a cellular level, represented by neurochemical states, which the brain sort of puts together as a result of stimuli, as a response to stimuli that it actually receives. And there's a feedback look to that. If we visualize something, then we get a top-down approach where the central control unit, which is the mind, essentially tells the body, this is how we should be. And funnily enough, there's a response coming from that at a cellular level again, which is fascinating, because uniquely amongst all the animals, we have this ability to imagine ourselves to be. You know, if you get a tiger and you exercise it, you may get 2 to 3, maybe 4% more power out of it, its performance, but there's an absolute limit to its muscles, which is basically determined by its biomechanics, its DNA, and what it is by nature. And if it doesn't exercise, sure, it won't have the 3 or 4%, but it's not going to be weak. It's still going to be a tiger, capable of incredible strength. We are not like that. We can say to ourselves, this is how I want to be. And if we really feel it, then a lot of things change inside us, which make us capable to be more focused, more motivated. That's our mind. But there's also a better response from our body. We can get our body to respond better to the things we do. We get our body to make us feel better in that. And that creates a biofeedback loop that affects our motivation. So feeling good at something, the reward system in our head is activated, and we tend to do more and more of that.
In the book, you described the fitness paradox, and I think you touched on it there just a few moments ago, but could you describe what you mean by that?
Yeah, of course. Okay, it's really funny, right? We look at how, I mean, if we take, again, any kind of fitness-related question, do you want to be fit and healthy in who you are? Do you want to manage your weight better? And we're not talking about being super fit or anything, but we're just talking about positive things. Everybody will agree that, yes, this is a good thing, this is how they want to be. At the same time, we fail amazingly badly at this. We know that the World Health Organization projection for 2050 is that 50% of the global population of adults is going to be overweight, and a significant percentage is going to be obese. We know that in the United States, 35% of the population trains less than 3 times a week. We know that in the US, right, they spend $286 billion a year on fitness, and they underuse it so badly. And globally, we spend almost $1 trillion a year in fitness. And again, we fail at that. So the paradox arises from the fact that it's not lack of access, it's not lack of knowledge, it's not lack of information, something deeper is at play. And the deeper thing, which I basically explain in the book so we can better understand why we behave in this fashion, is that from evolutionary biology, we're hardwired to avoid exercise because it's a stressor. So if it's a stressor, then there's an emotional response, and there's a reason for that, because essentially, what's the reason? We know from anthropologists embedded in hunter-gatherer societies, which are apart from civilization, that those who are in that kind of tribal itinerary sort of lifestyle, they are active every day. They have to walk long distances to get something. They have to dig for roots. They have to lift things. So they're physically exercising all day long. But at the same time, the moment they don't have to do something, they just chill. They gather around, they talk with each other. They'll perhaps, if they smoke something, which they have, or they just sit there, just resting. And this is a natural response of the body in an environment that's adversarial to it, to allow us essentially to conserve energy so that we can survive. It says life is going to be hard, so you don't have to make it willingly harder. You need to conserve energy, repair, rest, recuperate, so that you can function properly in that environment. We're not in that environment anymore. I can quite easily spend 10 hours a day looking at a screen and typing away. The refrigerator is like 10 steps away. It's got 10,000 calories in it. So I can just reach for that. And we're all in the same boat. So we have an easy lifestyle that doesn't task us. We have that natural aversion to stressors, which is natural enough. And when it applies to exercise, we tend to avoid it. We have all these excuses. At the end of the day, I've been exercising all my life. And I can still feel at the end of the day, when I want to go and exercise, my brain tells me, there's a little bit of work, or you can do that and you can exercise tomorrow. Or you're tired today, what a day. Maybe put it off. Twice as hard tomorrow, which we know realistically, it's not going to happen. I'm only going to exercise the same amount of time, more or less. So if I feel that, and I've been training all my life, I totally get how strong that aversion is in somebody who doesn't do it. And now they have to also break their daily routine, where they sit in front of the TV and they chill a little bit and let their mind sort of float, and they mentally recharge, but their body doesn't actually get to exercise. So that's the paradox we're fighting against. And when we realize that's what it is and the reasons why, then the fight against ourselves becomes easier to overcome. We know, okay, we need a strategy to get around that. And there are studies on this. It's actually fascinating because nature has made us the perfect machines when we allow it to function properly. We know that if we start exercising, our muscles within a 10-minute period secrete a particular hormone, which then affects the reward system in the brain, which then makes us more likely to just keep on exercising. But we need to get to that 10-minute period. And the block to that 10-minute period in our head is quite significant. So we need to be able to overcome that. And most times, unfortunately, we have a large number of our external blocks around it. We have to get dressed, pick up our gym bag, go to the car, drive to the gym. It may be raining, there may be traffic, find a parking space, undress, get dressed, get into the gym, and then start to exercise. So we have all those obstacles, right, which we've placed in the way. So really, being smart is saying to yourself, okay, I know those are obstacles. What can I do to make them go away? Can I find a gym nearer me? Can I have a home gym? Can I exercise at home? Can I get away with just a couple of piece of equipment, and a gym mat? These are things which we need to put in place to be smart. And it's only by putting together these sort of smart strategies that we make the task a little bit easier. And if we make it easier, then we're more likely to engage. And if we engage physically for 10 minutes, then we're going to train for an hour.
Very nice. Well, as you said, you don't need to have equipment. You can do simple like martial arts, stretching, just in your own, in your own bed, or just in your own privacy, your bedroom. So I highly recommend to my patient that when you get up in the morning, at least do 5-10 minutes stretching before you go to bed. And that's at least start at the beginning. And as you said, our mind is lazy, and the more lazy we get, the more deconditioned, and it's tougher hole to get up to going. So this is fascinating that you make it so simple and make it people. It's really the motivation. Did you interview, or did you do any neuroscience for this book about neurophysiology and muscle, or it was your own independent studies?
I subscribed to a number of universities because of my my degree and I get some research at the pre-publication stage, which alerts me to what's coming up. And then I go into all the published data and I go through that. And for this particular book, I didn't have to do any more, I didn't have to do any live interviews. There's a massive amount of research which is available right now. And it's coming out from all these different areas. And what is fascinating is that it is what the data is telling us is some of the things which we knew before, but we knew them only experientially, or we had anecdotal evidence and no data to really support it. And now we begin to see that this top-down approach where the brain tells the body something very specific, and then the body responds in kind. And then the bottom-up approach where the body, through movement, essentially, and through sensation, can alter the states of the brain. We begin to see that data come together in a more concrete way, which is, it's absolutely mind-blowing.
One of the stories that you mentioned in our brief call we had a week and a half ago was about the Navy SEALs, and I just love that story. It's could you share that with us?
Yeah, absolutely. Actually, I'm gonna thank you for bringing it up, and I'm going to sort of bring together several different things which show the power of the brain to change the body and vice versa. And let's start with that one because it's always, Navy SEALs are the heroes of everybody's sort of mental imagery world. And we know that Navy SEALs, when they go to apply for something, to be Navy SEALs, rather, the applicants who go for the program are already fit. They're already experienced, they're already disciplined, they've already been through the Army training, and now they're going to the next level. They're going to be Navy SEALs. And Navy SEAL training is incredibly difficult. So on paper, it has become really difficult to actually differentiate between the applicants. So they have a 4 to 8 week period where they're going through all these really, really difficult hardships. And about halfway through, I think it's week 2, they go through Hell Week. And Hell Week is designed specifically to take you to the absolute edge of your physical and mental resources. It's designed to break you. And what they see in that period is that 75% of the applicants, which is a significantly large number, drop out, and 25% make it through. So they the army is very interested to find out, what's the difference, because we can't tell. The person who dropped out is not significantly fitter or bigger or faster than the person who made it. So what's the difference here, or vice versa, right? So they couldn't actually see it. So they gave to Stanford University this study to do on 174 Navy SEALs. And they followed them through up to the point where they basically dropped out. They went through a barrage of questionnaires. They looked at psychometric tests, trying to understand what the difference is. And this is what it came down to. Essentially, those who dropped out, in their head, understood that the program they were going through, the physical training, was exceedingly hard. It was grinding them down. It was wearing them out. And they felt it was beating them. It was diminishing them. And the 25% actually made it through, had the same sensations. They felt it was exceedingly hard, tremendously difficult, it was grinding them down, and it was making them stronger. So essentially, it was a perception between those who made it and those who didn't. And this is the classic, is the glass half full or half empty experiment. The glass is always 50%. But those who see it as half empty, they treat it differently. They perceive the world around them differently. They perceive what is happening to them in relation to that differently. And that elicits different responses from their brain and their body, which essentially affect their performance at a measurable level. And those who are optimistic, they again have access to resources in their brain and their body, which allow them to pass through a point where you think, it's not really materially practical for a person to do, and they do it. So it's really, really amazing that just a tiny difference in perception can make such a big difference. But there's another thing on this, where essentially Harvard University in 2007 looked at 84 hotel maids from 7 different hotels. And they separated in 2 groups. One is a control group, one is a study group. And they basically, in the study group, they went through in detail and they told them, and they showed them how the things which they do every day are essentially making them fitter. And the other group, which is the control group, they told them, we're just starting to see what you do. Before they started, they looked at all the biomarkers, which are weight and blood pressure and BMI and waist to hip ratio and muscle mass, etc. So they followed them through for 8 weeks. And at the end of the 8 weeks, the group that had been told that what they do is exercise had shown a 12% improvement in all the biomarkers. They were lighter in weight, they had better muscle mass, their blood pressure was lower. And the group that actually weren't, it just went through the motions of working like every other day. They showed no difference. So this is the kind of thing that shows that what we perceive becomes real for us. So the group that actually had been told and shown through examples how their work consistent was essentially exercise and would affect them physically, accepted that and changed their perception of what they were doing, even though they were doing the same things every day.
The hotel mates, are those like co-workers? Is that what that would be the American equivalent of I'm just not familiar with that term, hotel mates.
Oh yes, it's the hotel staff. The ones who cleaners, the ones who do all the cleaning, and then you have little trolleys and they change all the rooms, they change the bedding, menial work, right? Which we see in hotels and we never sort of think about. So that was really fascinating in how that single change in perception affected what they saw. And that study was done in 2007. And at the time, 2007, studies done in 2007 were still 20th century. So they were looking for the placebo effect. But with what we know today, we totally understand that a change in perception constitutes a change in reality, which then is reflected in a change in our performance. There was another study on this in 2023, which is very recent, at the University of Essex in the UK. And they looked at athletes this time. And they took the most punishing sport you can find, which is 100 meters. And 100 meters is a very unforgivable, brutal distance. It's too short to make mistakes. If you're not 100% on the day, you're going to underperform. If you want to increase your output in power, you're looking at months and months and months of exercise and really, really hard grueling work to get maybe a 1% increase in performance. And what they gave the two control groups they had, and one they said, we're looking to see the times you guys are going to make, so just, give it your best. To the other group, they gave what they called language cues. And they said, which were directional. They said, you're a train blasting through a tunnel, which is kind of cartoonish, right? You are a rocket coming off a pad. And they had to work on that in their head. Now, what happened here, because there's no weeks and weeks of this, they picked them up, gave them the imagery, and they tested them. So it's before and after. Before they tested them, they're all pretty equal. After they tested them, the group that's actually working with the imagery in their head registers a 3% improvement in performance. And you think, how is that even possible? It's mind-blowing. And there are a lot of theories here on that because we don't exactly know how they can do it. One is that perhaps when we have what they call directed attention with a velocity factor, like aeroplane rockets, etc., it prepares the body better by perhaps warming the muscles up. And we have, again, a little bit of anecdotal evidence on that, which then reduces the initial resistance they feel as they blast off the blocks in their sprinting. So maybe it's that. Maybe by giving them something to focus their brain, they essentially split them a little bit, and the anxiety which you feel, pre-race nerves, all that, which is holding you back, is now dampened because the brain's attention is split into two. So one group perhaps is feeling anxiety, heart racing, sweating a little bit, they think, okay, this is it, I got to give it my best, I got to score my best time. The other guys are thinking, oh, I'm a rocket. So they're not feeling the anxiety. They're more relaxed. So that may be making a difference. And the third thing, of course, is that essentially when you get this kind of focus in the brain and body where you visualize something, part of your reality partially changes. Surely you don't become a rocket, but you're not limited by what you think your legs and arms will do. And that, again, has to do with the perceptual fatigue factor, which we know that if we test muscle fibers in the lab, they will always be able to produce 50% more power than their fatigue point. But when we're in a human body, we don't operate like that. We have a perceptual fatigue point where you feel tired, and the moment you feel tired, your body wants to quit, and you start slowing down, you want to stop, and inside your head, the voice is screaming, what are you doing? Because that's designed to help us survive biologically and not damage ourselves. But if you're focused that you're a rocket, and rockets know no limits, maybe the perceptual fatigue point moves a little bit further away. Or maybe it's still there at the same point, but not as loud. So again, your performance goes up. So they were able to register 3% instant improvement.
I practiced in Colorado Springs. I got to know some of the Olympic athletes, and actually had a friend of mine. And when I asked him, how's the Olympic, the same scenario as yours, says, when you enter, you qualify to Olympic, everybody's good. Everybody's physically, it's just the mental, strategy, the mental who you do that make you to become the top three. He says it is after that, it's not the physical, it's not like that. It's as you mentioned, it's the perception and pushing yourself and all different methods that everybody has from different country, whether visualization, training, and that's the psychology of it. He says that's what makes you to stay on the podium, but the rest is everybody's fit. So it's fascinating how the mind and body works in our body and how to push ourselves forward. I had one question. How does the perspective of American health from the other side of the pond, so from the European point of view, how do you see the American general health? Because we have, as you said, everything here. We have the opportunity, we have the gym, we have the today's data on your phone is incredible. How much you need to know about the knowledge, but I don't see it in our patient, and it's very tough to motivate them. What's the thought from the other side, and what are your pointers to help us?
it's crazy that we live in a truly global world. Communication has broken down barriers. Culture has become homogenized to a large degree. There's still differences, but there are a lot of similarities. And what is really fascinating, which essentially reinforces my theory that a lot of the problems we face are created by our man-made environment and how we operate, is the fact that Europe, despite the fact that there are countries there that have a tradition of active lifestyles, especially Mediterranean countries, where they have the sea and the sun and the kind of sort of better diet supposedly. They all face the same problem, and they're only just 1 or 2 statistical points behind the US. So you're looking at perhaps 48% of the population in the EU not exercising enough. You're looking at perhaps 34% of them only working out 3 times a week. So what this points to is essentially the similarity of our neurobiology and our biomechanical conditions. And we all feel the same aversion to exercise. We all feel the same sort of difficulty when it comes to strategizing how we're going to exercise. Life is complicated for us. We complicate it even further because we don't think about it analytically enough. And the barriers we put in place are the same whether we are in one side of the world or the other. And the cultures, we could argue, are quite different, those two. If you look at the US and its vastness and its resources, and look at Europe, and again, it's the cultural differences has. But when it comes to exercise, which is something like a fundamental need for a healthy biomechanical unit to function, we all appear to be in the same boat, which is quite fascinating. That has to do with 2 things. In a modern world, in a developed country, we all face the same problems. We face complex lifestyles, complicated lives, easy access to calories, and not truly strategizing our physical regime and prioritizing it. And when do we prioritize it? We prioritize it when we have a wake-up moment. If we have that health scare that makes us think that, our mortality is near, we're not going to live forever, then the light bulb goes off. Our emotional connection to what we're going to do is going to change. The value we ascribe to the results that we're going to get through a physical stressor like exercise change. And then we will do that. We'll diet, we'll exercise, we'll make sure we walk a lot, we'll make sure that we eat the right foods. Or when we are in some way driven by other specificities, which again have an emotional connection. If you want to, for instance, to see your grandkids grow up and you want to be active in a lifestyle, if you see yourself and connect to the future you emotionally, then you will do those things.
So I guess the whole world, you're going in the same direction. So, and I think it's a part of the stressors of the world, and I think the food industry and prepared food, and so hopefully we can change one person's mind at least, and that'd be positive. But we greatly appreciate your conversation and your input. I review some of the book. I'm excited to get your book, but I listened to some of the conversation you had with others. It sounded like a fascinating book.
We live at the time when the things which we face in terms of decision making, lifestyle choices, life trajectory, all the critical things in our life which build up are more and more complex, and they're only going to get more complicated because the world isn't getting any easier. And every generation that's grown up since the 50s has only faced more and more complexity, more and more choice, more and more responsibility on them. And the natural reaction to all this is to try and do as little as possible, to sort of try and find a way to avoid the burden, to try and find a path where you're guided. You don't have to think very much. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's how we're there to operate, but we still need to make the choices for us. We need to basically think that if we trust the world to take care of us, it won't. So we have to take care of ourselves at that level.
I was typing away a few minutes ago. That was me on Amazon ordering your book. So it's coming in a couple days, and I really look forward to the read. And I'm so curious, David. Could you give us a couple examples of things that you do that may be a little different? You mentioned your exercise regimen, which is commendable. That's really impressive. A couple examples about whether it's lifestyle or exercise or something that you found that's helpful, or are there little tips that that our audience can benefit from?
Yeah, definitely. Okay, the best thing we can do, which will help us, is to be kind to ourselves. And I will explain exactly what that is and how important it is. Now, we have this kind of push-pull relationship with exercise because we all know we should do it, we all know we don't do it, then we feel guilty. And when we feel guilty, what happens inside us? The toxicity level of our neurochemical makeup goes up a little bit. We feel a little bit worse than before. Nobody likes to feel guilty for very long. So then we sort of give ourselves a pass and we stop exercising, saying, it's too late now, I'm going to do it in 3 months. By putting it off into the future, we kick the can literally down the road. And we don't have to think about it now, so we don't feel any pressure. We know that we're going to tackle it at some point, so we haven't said we're giving up. So again, kudos for us, we feel great. When we do this, we obviously don't feel physically really bad, otherwise we wouldn't be operating like this. So we think we're going to be able to be like this forever, pretty much. So in our head is this imagery where things are going to happen, we're not going to do them right now, things are too difficult right now. And we sort of, put this decision off for as long as possible. And this is what I usually do. I try to make myself accountable to myself, but also kind. So I know that my life is hectic. There are things I don't control. There may be times when I'll have to go to bed late, and maybe times when I'll have to be away from home for a couple of days. So the thing that I've made it easy for me to exercise by having a home gym is great because it takes away travel. It's fully equipped. And really, we don't need equipment. And I thought about it for a long time. If you have a couple of, you don't need anything. But if you have a couple of barbells, great. Dumbbells, sorry, great. But by having equipment, what happens is that I can make it easy for myself to exercise when I don't want to. So on a day when, I'm really, really low in energy, I've been stressed out, I'm tired, and I think I still need to exercise, I can walk on a treadmill and watch Netflix at the same time for an hour. And that is great. It will distress me. I'll feel physically great. I've occupied my mind. Maybe I caught up with my Netflix viewing, which is, non-existent these days. And I've done something without feeling guilty. So I can do that. But there are days when I can't even do that. So instead of saying, what happened? I've fallen off the wagon. I've messed up my schedule. I've got contingency plans where on days where I know I'm going to be stressed, busy, traveling, whatever, I've got things to do. I've got exercises. I can go and do maybe 10 push-ups every hour if I'm working at home and I've got no other time for anything else. Or I can do maybe in the morning 20 push-ups and 20 squats. And it can be anything. It doesn't have to be that specific number. The idea is that you do something and you think, okay, what's that going to do? It's only 10 minutes. If I do 10 push-ups and 10 squats, that takes about a minute and a half tops. And you think this does nothing. But this is not true. The body can't differentiate between an hour's training and a minute's training. The neurochemical changes in the bloodstream are going to be the same. The changes in the hormonal profile of some of the major organs are going to be exactly the same. The feel-good factor inside us, because we move the body and those neurochemicals impacted into the mixture of things going on inside our body, is going to be the same. And we know for a fact from tests that if you only do 1 minute a day, every day, you're not going to show significant change in your physical makeup, but your fitness level overall and your biomarkers are going to be a lot better than if you didn't do that 1 minute a day. So we're looking in the course of a year, 365 minutes, it's about 5.5 hours of exercise. Nowhere near enough to keep us fit, but it will keep us healthy. So by having these strategies in my head, I stop feeling guilty. I don't say to myself, oh, you failed, which is really bad. I don't say, oh, you're backsliding, or you're losing out, or you're getting weaker. All the negative self-talk that's there, which holds us back. Instead, I say, okay, all I've got time for today are 10 squats, 10 push-ups. I'm going to hit the shower and get on with my day. And I feel good about having that plan. So it's having smart things like that. I've got a friend of mine who travels, and we had this discussion. And he's, I was going to say he's a kitchen fitter, but he's not. He basically works with a really top-end material called Korean. Don't know if you know it. Okay, it's made by DuPont. It's amazing stuff. really technically skilled job, and he travels all over the country doing it. And some days he simply hasn't got even time for that 1 minute. And we discussed it. I said, you haven't got time. He goes to me, if I do that 1 minute, I'm going to be like 5 minutes coming out of the house. And if I hit the traffic, then what's supposed to take me 20 minutes is going to take me 45 to 50 or 60 minutes. And then his whole day begins. So I said, okay, you haven't got a minute. So what are you going to do? And he thought about it. And this is what he does now. He does it consistently. On those days he can't exercise, he'll park 10 minutes away from his meeting or the place he's going to. So suddenly he's incorporated 20 minutes of walking back and forth on one meeting. And sometimes he'll have 5 of those in a day. So now he's got 100 minutes, which he doesn't feel is exercise. And that's being smart. It's basically, I think, a choice he strategized, that he incorporated, that makes him feel not guilty when he fails to exercise. And it's actually made him fitter, because a lot of, it adds up. Yeah. So it's being smart like that, that we actually need to operate in such a way.
If you give advice to your friends or our audience for longevity and happiness, what are the top few things that you can give them? So, because it's exercise, not only one thing, it's just a whole, spectrum of life, and for happiness and all of that. So what are your top, 4 or 5 things that for longevity we should be engaging to put this whole kind of puzzle together?
We need 3 fundamental things in order for us to age well, so that as we grow older, our body doesn't become feeble. And those 3 things are strength, aerobic capacity, and mobility. And they sound like, okay, we need to be athletes. No, we don't. You need to be able to move as you want. If you're going to go for a walk for half an hour, you shouldn't have to be out of breath. So this is something you should be doing regularly. And you should do it whether you're 40 or 50 or 60 or 80. If you want to bend down on the floor and pick something up, you shouldn't have to hold on to something to do it and have struggled getting up. So you need to move your body in natural ways. And again, it doesn't have to be exercise related. You can practice bending down, picking up something so many times. So if we have those 3 things, we have strength and mobility, and we have aerobic capacity, then we have the neurobiological health that maintains the body's integrity and how it moves. But more important than that, it helps maintain the brain's integrity in its own sharpness. We know that one of the reasons that dementia occurs in older people is because their bones weaken. And again, this came from a Harvard study that happened by accident. They were looking at women who suffer from osteoporosis, and they were studying to see the effects of hip breaks on body health. And they found a correlation between getting a hip break as you're older and developing dementia within 6 months. And they looked a little bit deeper into the correlation. And what they found is that essentially, as we know now, every organ in the body does more than one thing. So the bones that we have, which are strong in order to maintain anchor points for the muscles, which move our whole body mass, if they weaken, then they produce fewer calcium ions, which help develop the way the brain operates when it basically passes electricity through the different neurons in the electrical circuit of the brain. So the inability of the bone to supply enough of those essentially weakens the brain, which then begins to atrophy in certain specific areas, which leads to developing dementia. So just by being physically active, without having to run marathons or having to lift heavy weights, just moving our body and enjoying it, then we begin to make sure that our brain is also active, and we have an active brain and an active body. And then we're more likely to experience happiness in life, the fullness of life, happiness in being alive, and that makes us just more capable, fully human beings, really.
That's really interesting. I never thought I must think about this stuff differently, because now 1 minute of exercise, bone health, and dementia. It's really interesting. A lot of the meds I prescribe as an oncologist, like aromatase inhibitors for breast cancer, diminished bone health. That's a huge
Yes.
factor. And we actually have seen a higher rate of dementia in women who are prescribed these medicines. It's not a huge effect, but it's there.
We see the body now as it's a machine that's basically, it's an efficiency machine in many ways. Every organ we have does more than one thing and impacts more than just one area of the body. And the whole body-brain thing is integrated. I mean, when you recently discovered, I mean, we knew it, but nobody was looking at the data. But if you have a heart transplant, you lose some of your memories. You'll get them back eventually, but they're lost for up to about 2 years. It's like, what? Yeah, there was a case in Britain where this novelist, and I can't remember his name now, he got a heart transplant, so he goes back home and he's fine, right? He's absolutely fine. He's going through his computer and he's looking at his files, and he finds a file of a published novel. Well, he finds a file of a novel he has no recollection of. And he thinks, surely that is not one of mine. So he looks at that and sure, it looks like he's written it on his computer. So he goes on Amazon and yeah, there it is, published. So he goes back to his doctor and he says, what is happening here? He says, oh yeah, we have some data that shows that if you have a heart transplant, essentially you lose some of your memories, but over a period of 2 to 4 years, you're going to get them back. Because the memory, obviously the heart and the neurons it has play a role in some of the memories that are stored, and we don't know exactly how. And the brain has memories. Yeah, no, it's crazy, right? But we know this now. We know that essentially there's no part of us we can willingly sacrifice or replace without some kind of implication later down the line.
That actually was seen in a patient with even going cardiac bypass. Through the bypass machine, there's not as much pulsation as our heart does. And some of the emotional state on post bypass is very complex and is very understudied. That and I've seen some of my own colleagues that they had a bypass and they felt like emotionally have completely changed. And whether this is during the flow of because during the bypass the blood most is continuous, may get rid of the toxins, or there's a lot of phenomena going on just by changing the physiology to the brain. And that for most people they don't see it, but some people they feel drastically after that. Yeah, that's fascinating. All our organs be connected together, so it's a whole complex diet. I think exercise, sleep, and all other things are all integrated.
And I'm so glad you brought this up, because we change one little bit and it has a cascade of other effects. That's why it's so important to be kind to ourselves. Coming back to what I said earlier, if we beat ourselves up for everything we do wrong, and we do many things wrong each day, we are basically driving down our brain's capacity to cope with stress, because we're adding to it ourselves. We're reinforcing negative perceptions of ourselves, so we are self-limiting. And we're also, in practicality, increasing the toxicity inside us. We are increasing how bad we feel physically at a cellular level. So just saying, okay, I didn't do this. It's no biggie. I'm going to find a solution and I can do that. And if we just take this approach, immediately the pressure we feel is relieved. We feel better in how we do. We feel more capable, we feel smarter. And we tend to fulfill the potential of how we feel most times.
Well, I am so looking forward to reading your book. Do you have any closing thoughts or comments, David?
Yeah, what I was going to say is that despite everything we just said, nothing in our life is really, really easy. And the moment we accept that, then we realize that everything that we want has to be created, not by doing things harder, because that's not going to be possible. It's only going to add to our energetic cost of life, but by doing them smarter, by finding strategies which make things easier, by finding some kind of routine which simplifies something. I've got this thing which helps me sometimes. I just have 2 types of clothes to wear, a black t-shirt or a white one. And that's all I've got. I've got a dozen black t-shirts and a dozen white ones. And I just pick up one or the other. I don't have to think about it. It doesn't have to complicate my life. And everything else around it is just, this. And you think that little tip makes a complex life just a little bit easier. And if we keep adding to those things, then life itself is becoming easier. And the complexities which we face are easier to face because now we have margin. we're not operating at the edge of our ability. So that's the best way to deal with the modern world.
And how can our listeners find you?
You can find me at davidamerland.com, or you can Google me and find all my socials. I put a lot of stuff out there, so you'll be able to find it.
Well, thank you so much for doing this. And yeah, we'd love to have you back again in the future.
It was great to knowing you, and the more I research about you, the more fascinating you are, and you're doing a great job. Just keep doing it. So looking forward to the next conversation.
Thank you so much for having me here. I really enjoyed this. Thank you.